The yellow school bus lurched violently as Sarah Martinez gripped the oversized steering wheel, her knuckles white against the cracked plastic. 6 months had passed since the world ended, and she still couldn't believe she was driving a bus full of terrified children through streets that had once been safe suburban neighborhoods. "Miss Martinez, I'm scared," whispered Lucy, a 7-year-old with pigtails who clutched a stuffed rabbit like a lifeline. "I know, sweetheart. We're almost to safety," Sarah lied smoothly, though her eyes constantly scanned the abandoned cars and empty houses that lined Maple Street. She had no idea where safety could be found anymore. The radio crackled with static before a calm, authoritative voice cut through the white noise. "This is Marcus Chin broadcasting on emergency frequency 146.52. If anyone can hear this, we're establishing a safe zone at Pineview Mountain Resort, 40 miles north of the city. We have medical supplies, food, and defensive positions. Repeat, this is not a trap. We're here to help." Sarah's heart jumped. She'd been searching for other survivors for weeks, ever since she'd rescued these 7 children from Roosevelt Elementary during the chaos. The voice sounded genuine, professional even. She reached for the radio handset. "This is Sarah Martinez. I'm driving a school bus with 7 children heading north on Route 18. Are you really there?" The response came immediately. "Confirmed, Sarah. I see you on the highway. Yellow bus. License plate ending in 847. Sarah's blood ran cold. How could he see them? She slammed on the brakes, causing the children to tumble forward in their seats. Through the dusty windshield, she spotted movement in the trees ahead. A figure emerged from the underbrush, hands raised peacefully. He was tall, Asian, wearing torn military fatigues and carrying a medical bag instead of weapons. "Stay back," Sarah shouted through the open bus door, though her voice betrayed more exhaustion than authority. Marcus Chin approached slowly, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "I'm a medic, former Army. I've been watching the road, hoping to find other survivors." He gestured toward the tree line. "I have a small group with me. We're all heading to the resort." An elderly man emerged next, supporting a teenage girl who was limping badly. Behind them came a woman in a doctor's coat, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and a young man covered in engine grease who carried a heavy toolkit. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez," Marcus called out, indicating the woman in the coat. "She specializes in pediatric care. These kids need proper medical attention." Sarah's resolve wavered. Lucy had developed a persistent cough, and 2 of the boys showed signs of malnutrition. She opened the bus door slowly. "I'm Pete," the elderly man said, his voice gravelly but kind. "Retired engineer. Been trying to keep these young folks alive." He nodded toward the injured teenager. "This is Maya. She's been monitoring radio frequencies, trying to establish contact with other survivor groups." Maya looked up, her dark eyes bright despite her obvious pain. "I've been tracking communication patterns. There are at least 12 other groups within a 100-mile radius, but most have gone silent in the past 2 weeks. The young mechanic stepped forward. "Jake Thompson. I can fix just about anything with an engine, and I know where to find supplies." He gestured toward Sarah's bus. "That engine's running rough. You won't make it another 50 miles without maintenance." Dr. Vasquez approached the bus door. "May I examine the children? I can see from here that several need immediate attention." Sarah felt the weight of leadership settling on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. 7 young lives depended on her decisions, and these strangers were offering exactly what she desperately needed: expertise, resources, and hope. "The resort you mentioned," she said to Marcus. "How do you know it's safe?" Marcus pulled out a weathered map, pointing to a red circle drawn in marker. "It's isolated, defensible, with its own water source and generator system. Pete's been there before. Says it has everything we need to establish a permanent settlement." Pete nodded enthusiastically. "Built it myself back in '98. 3 escape routes, reinforced structures, and enough space for 50 people if needed. It's our best shot at building something lasting." As if summoned by their conversation, a low moan echoed from the forest behind them. Then another. The infected had found their scent. "Decision time," Marcus said grimly, shouldering his medical bag. "We move together or we die separately." Sarah looked back at the 7 faces depending on her, then at the 5 adults offering help. Sometimes survival meant taking calculated risks. "Everyone on the bus," she commanded. "Let's go find this refuge." The school bus wheezed to a stop before the imposing stone gates of Pineview Mountain Resort, its engine finally surrendering after the grueling climb up the winding mountain road. Sarah switched off the ignition and stared through the windshield at what would either become their salvation or their tomb. "Well, I'll be damned," Pete muttered, climbing down from the bus with surprising agility for his 73 years. She's still standing strong. The resort sprawled across a natural plateau, its main lodge built from local stone and timber that had weathered decades of mountain storms. 3 separate cabin clusters dotted the property, connected by covered walkways that would provide protection from both weather and unwanted visitors. Most importantly, the entire complex sat behind a natural barrier of steep cliffs on 3 sides, with only one accessible road leading to the front gates. Marcus surveyed their new home with a tactical eye. Defensible positions, multiple fallback points, and high ground advantage. "Pete, you built a fortress disguised as a vacation resort." "Had to think about security even back then," Pete replied, producing a ring of keys from his pocket. Resort business was getting dangerous with all the folks going missing in these mountains during the 90s. Course, we thought we were worried about regular criminals back then. Dr. Vasquez was already examining the children as they disembarked, her trained eye cataloging various concerns. "We need to get them inside immediately. Lucy's cough has worsened and Tommy's showing signs of dehydration." The main lodge doors groaned open, revealing a spacious interior that time had treated kindly. Dust motes danced in shafts of afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows, but the structure remained solid. The great room featured a massive stone fireplace surrounded by comfortable seating, while a commercial-grade kitchen occupied the far end of the space. "First priority is securing the perimeter," Marcus announced, his leadership naturally asserting itself. "Jake, can you get those generators running? We'll need power for lights and communications." Jake was already examining an electrical panel near the kitchen. "Give me 2 hours. These old diesel generators are workhorses if they've been maintained properly." He disappeared through a service door, toolkit in hand. Maya limped to a corner table and began unpacking her radio equipment. "I'll set up our communication hub here. We need to monitor emergency frequencies and establish regular check-ins with other survivor groups." Sarah gathered the children in the great room, her teacher's instincts taking over. "Okay everyone, this is our new home. We're going to make it safe and comfortable together." She assigned the older kids to help the younger ones while Dr. Vasquez set up a makeshift medical station. Pete wandered through the lodge like a proud father, checking systems and explaining the resort's features. "Water comes from a natural spring up the mountain, flows through our own filtration system. Food storage is in the basement, designed to stay cool year-round. And these walls," he patted the stone construction, "they're 3 feet thick. Built to last." As evening approached, the group had established basic routines. Jake had successfully restored power to essential systems, filling the lodge with warm light that pushed back the gathering darkness. Maya's radio crackled with distant transmissions from other survivors, proof that they weren't alone in the world. Dr. Vasquez emerged from examining the children with cautiously optimistic news. "Lucy needs antibiotics for her respiratory infection, but it's treatable. The others are malnourished but stable. With proper care and regular meals, they should recover fully." Marcus called everyone together around the great fireplace as Pete got a warming blaze started. "We've accomplished a lot today, but we need to talk about long-term survival. This place gives us advantages, but it also makes us a target if the wrong people find us." "What kind of wrong people?" asked Tommy, a 9-year-old with serious eyes that had seen too much. Sarah answered gently. "Some folks have forgotten how to work together, sweetheart. They think taking from others is easier than building something themselves." Jake returned from his exploration of the property, his expression grim. "Found evidence of previous visitors. Campfire remains near the back gate, maybe 2 weeks old. Someone's been watching this place." The group fell silent, the crackling fire suddenly seeming insufficient against the vast darkness beyond the windows. Maya looked up from her radio equipment. "I've been monitoring local frequencies. There's chatter about a group calling themselves the Wolves. They've been raiding smaller settlements, taking supplies and..." She glanced at the children, "recruiting people by force." Marcus stood, his military bearing evident. "Then we prepare for the possibility of conflict while hoping for peaceful coexistence. Pete, what are our defensive options?" Pete's eyes gleamed with unexpected enthusiasm. "Well, since you asked, I might have installed a few surprises when I built this place. Motion sensors along the access road, reinforced shutters that conceal every window, and a few other tricks I learned from my engineering days." Dr. Vasquez tucked a blanket around Lucy, who had fallen asleep on the couch. "Whatever we face it together. These children need stability and we adults need purpose. Taking care of each other gives us both." As the night deepened, they established watch rotations and sleeping arrangements. The children would stay in the main lodge where it was warmest and safest, while the adults took turns monitoring the radio and patrolling the perimeter. Sarah stood at one of the great room windows, looking out at the star-filled sky that seemed impossibly bright away from city lights. Marcus joined her, two leaders sharing a moment of quiet reflection. "Think we can make this work?" she asked. Marcus nodded slowly. "We have everything we need. Shelter, water, security, and most importantly, people worth protecting. That gives us something those wolves don't have." "What's that?" "A reason to fight that's bigger than just survival." Outside, something howled in the distance, but whether it was human or infected, neither could tell. Inside the lodge, the fire burned steady and warm, a beacon of hope in a world gone dark. Lucy's fever spiked at 3 a.m, her small body shaking with chills despite the warm blankets Dr. Vasquez had wrapped around her. The 7-year-old's breathing had become labored, each breath a struggle that sent panic through Sarah's heart. "Her infection isn't responding to the basic antibiotics we have," Dr. Vasquez whispered to Marcus and Sarah near the medical station. "She needs stronger medication, specifically amoxicillin clavulinate. Without it..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Marcus studied the map spread across the kitchen table, his finger tracing the route to Millbrook, the closest town with a proper pharmacy. 12 miles down the mountain, through what used to be residential neighborhoods. The place has been picked over, but medical supplies might still be there. "It's a death trap," Jake said bluntly, joining the conversation. "I scouted that area 2 days ago looking for vehicle parts. The infected have congregated there, drawn by something we couldn't identify. Plus, Maya intercepted radio chatter suggesting the wolves have been operating in that sector." Sarah looked back at Lucy, who was now delirious with fever, calling out for her mother who would never answer again. "We can't just let her die. There has to be a way." Pete shuffled over, having overheard their discussion. "There's an old service tunnel system under Millbrook. Built in the 1940s during the Cold War, connects the hospital, pharmacy, and police station. Most folks forgot it existed, but I helped survey it back in my consulting days." Maya looked up from her radio equipment, her teenage face grave beyond her years. "I've been monitoring emergency broadcasts from that area. The infected there aren't behaving normally. They're organized somehow, moving in coordinated groups instead of wandering randomly." Dr. Vasquez checked Lucy's temperature again, her expression growing more worried. "We have maybe 18 hours before her condition becomes critical. After that, even the right antibiotics might not be enough." Marcus made the decision that leadership demanded. "We go. Small team, fast insertion, specific target. Jake, I need you to prep the most reliable vehicle we have. Pete, draw us a map of those tunnels. Maya, monitor all frequencies for patrol patterns." "I'm going with you," Sarah declared firmly. "Absolutely not. The children need you here and..." "Lucy needs those medicines, and I'm the only one here who knows her medical history and allergies," Sarah interrupted. "Dr. Vasquez needs to stay with the other kids in case this infection spreads." "I'm going." Pete was already sketching tunnel layouts from memory. Entrance is through the old courthouse basement. Tunnel runs straight to Millbrook General Hospital, then branches to the pharmacy and police station. Exit points are marked with green paint on the walls. Jake returned from the garage, wiping grease from his hands. Modified the pickup truck. Reinforced the bed, added push bars, and installed a second fuel tank. "She'll get us there and back, but we need to be smart about this." As dawn broke over the mountains, the supply team made final preparations. Marcus carried a tactical pack with medical supplies and emergency gear. Sarah wore practical clothes and carried a detailed list of medications Dr. Vasquez had prepared. Jake brought his toolkit and mechanical expertise, while Pete, despite protests about his age, insisted on coming as their tunnel guide. "We stick together no matter what," Marcus emphasized as they loaded into the truck. "Our mission is simple: get the medicine and get home. We're not heroes trying to save everyone we meet." The drive down the mountain was tense but uneventful. Jake navigated carefully around abandoned vehicles and debris, taking routes that avoided main thoroughfares where infected typically congregated. As they approached Millbrook's outskirts, the scope of devastation became clear. Cars sat empty in the middle of streets, their doors hanging open as if their occupants had simply vanished mid-journey. Houses showed signs of hasty evacuation, with belongings scattered across lawns and broken windows revealing dark interiors. There, Pete pointed to a stone building that had once housed the county courthouse. "Basement entrance is around back. Should still be accessible if the locks haven't been changed. They parked behind the building using a delivery truck as cover. The courthouse basement door hung slightly ajar, revealing a darkness that seemed to swallow their flashlight beams. Pete led the way down concrete steps that echoed with each footfall. The tunnel system was exactly as Pete had described. Narrow concrete passages lined with pipes and electrical conduits, stretching into the distance like arteries beneath the dead town. Emergency lighting flickered sporadically, casting eerie shadows that made every corner a potential threat. "Hospital is 600 yards straight ahead," Pete whispered, consulting his hand-drawn map. "Pharmacy branch is another 200 beyond that." They moved in single file, Marcus leading with Sarah close behind, their footsteps muffled by years of accumulated dust. The air was stale but breathable, carrying no trace of the decay that plagued the surface world. Halfway to their destination, Maya's voice crackled through their radio. "Supply team, this is base. I'm picking up movement on the surface directly above your position. Multiple contacts, moving in formation." Marcus held up a fist, stopping the group. Through the concrete ceiling they could hear footsteps and muffled voices. The wolves had found their truck. "Change of plans?" Marcus whispered. "We continue to the pharmacy, but we're leaving through a different exit." "Pete, what are our options?" Pete studied his map by flashlight. "Police station exit puts us 4 blocks east of our current position. We'll have to loop around to reach the truck, but it might give us the element of surprise." Sarah's thoughts were entirely focused on Lucy, fighting for her life back at the resort. "How much further to the pharmacy?" 100 yards, Pete replied. Above them, a voice called out in the distance. "Check that truck. Someone's been here recently." The race against time had become a race for their lives, but Lucy's fever was still climbing, and failure wasn't an option they could accept. "Move fast, stay quiet," Marcus ordered. "We get those medicines and we all go home together." The tunnel stretched ahead of them, leading toward either salvation or disaster, while somewhere above, the wolves were hunting. The antibiotics had worked their miracle on Lucy, but winter's arrival at Pineview Mountain Resort brought challenges that no medicine could cure. 3 weeks after the successful supply run, the first major snowstorm of the season buried the access road under 4 feet of powder, effectively cutting off their mountain sanctuary from the outside world. Sarah stood at the great room window, watching snowflakes the size of quarters drift past the frosted glass. The thermometer outside read -8 degrees Fahrenheit, and the wind howled through the pine trees with a voice that seemed almost alive. More troubling was what she could see moving through that white curtain. Dark shapes that stumbled forward with mechanical persistence, unaffected by the cold that would have killed any living person within hours. "The infected don't seem bothered by freezing temperatures," Marcus observed, joining her at the window. His breath fogged the glass as he spoke. "If anything, the cold seems to preserve them better." Dr. Vasquez looked up from where she was checking Tommy's ears for signs of infection. "Theoretically, that makes sense. Lower temperatures slow decomposition and reduce the metabolic demands of whatever's driving their behavior. They're essentially biological machines running on minimal energy." Jake burst through the main doors, stamping snow off his boots and shaking ice crystals from his jacket. "Perimeter check is complete, but we've got problems. The main generator is burning through fuel faster than expected. At this rate, we'll be out of diesel in 10 days. Pete looked up from the fireplace where he was stoking the logs. "Emergency rationing it is, then. We run the generator 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the evening. Use the fireplace and wood stoves for heat, kerosene lamps for light during the off hours." Maya, bundled in blankets at her communication station, held up a hand for silence. "I'm picking up a distress signal. Weak but consistent." She fine-tuned her equipment, and a desperate voice crackled through the static. "This is Jennifer Walsh at the Millbrook Elementary Evacuation Shelter. We have 43 people, including 26 children, trapped by a storm collapse. Our heating system failed 3 days ago. If anyone can hear this, we need immediate assistance. Repeat, this is an emergency." The room fell silent except for the wind outside and the crackling of the fire. Everyone understood the math. Their supplies were already stretched thin, feeding 13 people. Adding 43 more, especially in winter conditions, would likely mean death for everyone. "We can't," Jake said quietly. "I'm sorry, but we barely have enough food and fuel for ourselves. Taking on that many people would be suicide." Dr. Vasquez stood up slowly, her face conflicted. 26 children, Jake. The same age as our kids here." "Our kids come first," Sarah said firmly, surprising herself with the hardness in her voice. "I won't risk Lucy and the others for strangers." Marcus began pacing, his military training warring with his humanitarian instincts. The shelter is 12 miles away, through infected territory in the worst storm in decades. Even if we could reach them, how would we transport 43 people back here? Maya continued monitoring the radio frequency. Their signal is getting weaker. I don't think they have much time. Old Pete sat heavily in his armchair, the weight of years and difficult decisions showing in his weathered face. In my day we had a saying, you can't save everyone but you can't save no one either. Maybe we can't take them all but perhaps we can offer something. An idea sparked in Maya's eyes. What if we don't bring them here? What if we help them where they are? Marcus stopped pacing. Explain. The shelter is already fortified, right? They just need heat and supplies. Jake, could you repair their heating system? And Pete, didn't you mention emergency supply caches throughout this region? Pete nodded slowly. 3 different locations within 5 miles of Millbrook Elementary. Emergency food, medical supplies, and portable generators. Set them up during Y2K preparations, never had to use them. Sarah felt her resolve wavering. Even if we could help them survive in place, someone would have to make the journey there and back. In this weather, through infected territory. I'll go, Marcus said without hesitation. Jake, can you modify the snowmobile for supply transport? Already thinking about it, Jake replied. Reinforced sled, emergency shelter, extra fuel. It's dangerous but possible. Dr. Vasquez packed her medical bag. If you're going, you'll need someone with medical training. Those people have been without heat for 3 days. Absolutely not, Marcus protested. The children here need you. Sarah can handle basic medical care for our kids. Those 43 people might need emergency treatment. The argument might have continued, but Lucy's small voice cut through the discussion. Are there kids out there who are cold and scared like we were? Sarah knelt beside the 7-year-old. Yes, sweetheart, but... Then we have to help them, Lucy said with the simple certainty of childhood. Miss Martinez, you always taught us to help people when they need it. The adults exchanged glances, reminded that sometimes children understood right and wrong more clearly than the adults trying to protect them. Pete stood up, decision made. I'm going to. Those supply caches are hidden, and the shelter's heating system is pre-war. You'll need someone who knows both. That's insane, Sarah protested. Pete, you're 73 years old. Exactly why I should go, Pete replied with surprising steel in his voice. I've lived my life. These young folks and all those children deserve their chance. As dawn broke the next morning, the rescue team prepared for departure. The storm had lessened but not stopped, and the temperature had dropped to -15 degrees. Marcus, Dr. Vasquez, and Pete loaded the modified snowmobile with supplies, tools, and emergency medical equipment. Maya established radio check-in protocols while Jake made final mechanical adjustments. Sarah gathered the children around the fireplace, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. Will they come back? Tommy asked quietly. Sarah pulled him closer. They're going to try their best. And while they're gone, we're going to keep this place warm and safe for when they return. Through the window, she watched the snowmobile disappear into the white wilderness, carrying 3 of their own toward an uncertain fate. The wind picked up again, and somewhere in that howling sound, she could swear she heard the moans of the infected, waiting in the cold. Marcus gripped the snowmobile's handlebars as they carved through the frozen landscape, the machine's headlight cutting a narrow path through the swirling snow. Dr. Vasquez sat behind him, her arms wrapped tightly around his waist, while Pete rode in the supply sled they were towing, wrapped in emergency blankets but still exposed to the brutal wind. Radio check. Maya's voice crackled through their headsets. How's the weather down there? Visibility near 0, Marcus reported, having to shout over the engine noise. Following the power lines like Pete suggested. ETA to first supply cache is 20 minutes. The infected were everywhere in the winter landscape, but the storm worked in the rescue team's favor. The undead moved slowly through the deep snow, their mechanical shambling no match for the snowmobile's speed. Still, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched from the white wilderness. Pete's voice came through the radio, steady despite the cold. Cache Alpha should be under the old radio tower, buried beneath the maintenance shed. Look for the red reflector on the door frame. They found the cache exactly where Pete had said it would be, an underground storage bunker sealed with a heavy steel door. Inside, emergency supplies from 25 years ago waited in pristine condition. Portable generators, medical supplies, non-perishable food, and most importantly, industrial-grade space heaters. Incredible, Dr. Vasquez marveled as they loaded supplies onto the sled. You really prepared for the end of the world. Pete chuckled grimly. Just the end of civilization as we knew it. Turns out I wasn't pessimistic enough. The journey to Millbrook Elementary took another hour through increasingly treacherous terrain. The school building loomed out of the storm like a fortress, its windows boarded up and emergency lights flickering weakly. Dark shapes moved around the perimeter, infected drawn by the faint warmth and sound of 43 people huddled inside. There, Marcus pointed to a service entrance on the building's east side. Fewer infected on that approach. They circled wide, using the storm as cover. The infected in the area moved with that same disturbing coordination Maya had noticed on the radio, turning toward sounds and movement with unnatural synchronization. Marcus had seen zombie behavior evolve over the months, but this level of organization was new and deeply troubling. Pete climbed off the sled with surprising agility, shouldering a pack full of tools. I'll get their heating system running. Elena, you triage the medical situations. Marcus, secure the perimeter and establish communication with base. The service door opened to reveal a haggard woman in her 30s, her face lighting up with desperate hope. Thank God. I'm Jennifer Walsh. Are you here to evacuate us? We're here to help you survive here, Dr. Vasquez explained gently. Moving this many people in these conditions would be impossible, but we can get your heat restored and bring supplies. Jennifer led them through darkened hallways lined with families huddled under blankets. The scope of their situation became immediately clear. 26 children ranging from toddlers to teenagers, 17 adults including elderly and disabled individuals, all surviving on rapidly dwindling supplies and body heat. Pete found the heating system in the basement, a massive boiler that had simply shut down from lack of maintenance. Give me 2 hours, he muttered, already stripping off his outer layer to get to work. This old girl just needs some attention. Dr. Vasquez set up a triage station in the school's nurse's office, quickly identifying cases of hypothermia, dehydration, and respiratory infections. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but conditions that would become serious without intervention. Marcus established radio contact with Maya. Base, this is rescue team. We've reached the shelter. 43 souls confirmed, conditions stable but deteriorating. Beginning assistance operations now. Copy that, Maya responded. Sarah wants to know about the children. Marcus looked around at the small faces watching him with mixture of hope and fear, expressions he recognized from their own kids back at the resort. Tell Sarah the children are brave and holding on. We're going to make sure they stay safe. The next several hours tested everyone's endurance. Pete worked miracle after miracle on the ancient heating system, coaxing life back into pipes that hadn't carried hot water in days. Dr. Vasquez moved from patient to patient, treating everything from frostbite to malnutrition with supplies from the cache. Marcus coordinated security, barricading vulnerable entrances and setting up the portable generators Pete had brought. The infected outside seemed content to maintain their distance for now, but their numbers were growing. Heat's coming online, Pete announced over the radio around noon. Temperature should start rising within the hour. Cheers erupted throughout the shelter as the first warm air began flowing through the vents. Children who had been listless with cold suddenly found energy to smile and play. Adults who had been conserving every calorie began moving around, helping distribute the food supplies the rescue team had brought. Jennifer pulled Marcus aside, tears streaming down her face. I can't thank you enough. We were losing hope. The children were starting to get sick and I thought. She couldn't finish the sentence. You kept them alive, Marcus replied. That took incredible strength and leadership. We just brought the tools you needed to keep going. Dr. Vasquez finished her medical rounds with encouraging news. Everyone should recover fully with proper warmth and nutrition. The supplies we brought will last them at least 2 weeks, maybe 3 if they're careful. But as afternoon wore on, the infected outside began behaving differently. Instead of their usual random wandering, they were forming into groups and positioning themselves around the school building. Maya's voice came through the radio with growing concern. Rescue team, I'm monitoring multiple radio frequencies. There's organized activity in your area. The infected aren't acting alone. Pete looked up from the boiler he was fine-tuning. What's she mean, not acting alone? Marcus moved to a window and peered through the boards. What he saw chilled him more than the winter wind. The infected were arranged in rough formations around the building, but standing among them were figures that moved with purpose and intelligence. Humans working alongside the undead. The wolves, he breathed into his radio. They're not just raiders. They're controlling the infected somehow. Jennifer overheard and went pale. That's impossible. The infected attack everyone indiscriminately. Not anymore, Marcus replied grimly. And they know we're here. As if summoned by his words, a voice echoed across the snowy landscape, amplified by a megaphone. Attention people in the school building. You are surrounded. We know you have supplies and equipment. Come out now and we'll make your deaths quick. Dr. Vasquez moved protectively closer to the children. Pete checked his tool bag, improvising weapons from screwdrivers and wrenches. Marcus assessed their tactical situation and found it grim: 3 adults against an unknown number of enemies who commanded the infected. Maya's voice crackled urgently through the radio. Rescue team, we're tracking your position. Jake's preparing to come after you, but he won't make it in time if you're under immediate attack. Marcus looked around at the 43 people depending on them, then at his 2 companions who had risked everything to be here. Sometimes being the strong ones who protected the weak meant making impossible choices. Negative base. Tell Jake to stay put. We're going to handle this ourselves. Outside, the voice with the megaphone spoke again. You have 5 minutes to decide. After that, we let our friends inside to find you. The rescue had become a siege, and Marcus realized their greatest challenge wasn't getting help to these people. It was getting all of them out alive. The siege at Millbrook Elementary had ended in stalemate rather than victory. After Marcus, Dr. Vasquez, and Pete successfully restored heat and delivered supplies to the 43 trapped survivors, the wolves had simply withdrawn into the forest, leaving behind an ominous message. This isn't over. We know where you live now. Back at Pineview Resort, the rescue team's return should have been cause for celebration. Instead, it marked the beginning of their darkest challenge yet. The successful mission had attracted attention from other survivor groups, and within days of their return, a convoy of vehicles appeared at the resort gates. 22 more people, Sarah reported as she watched the approaching group through binoculars. Mixed ages including children. They say they're refugees from a settlement that was overrun by the wolves. Marcus studied the newcomers with military precision, noting their organization and the way they moved. Something felt off, but 17 of the group were clearly families with young children who looked genuinely desperate for shelter. The convoy's leader introduced himself as Thomas Garrison, a former police chief from a town 30 miles south. He was a man in his late 40s with silver hair and the kind of commanding presence that naturally drew followers. His story was heartbreaking. His community had thrived for months before being systematically destroyed by wolf raids. They don't just take supplies, Garrison explained to the assembled community that evening. They break people. Turn neighbors against each other. Make survival into a competition where only the strongest deserve to live. Over the following days, Garrison proved himself invaluable. His law enforcement background provided insights into security and organization that even Marcus found helpful. He worked tirelessly, organizing supply inventories, establishing more efficient watch rotations, and training community members in basic defensive tactics. But Jake was the first to notice the subtle changes. People are starting to defer to Garrison for decisions, he told Marcus privately. Not just his own people, some of ours too. Maya had been monitoring radio frequencies and discovered something troubling. Garrison's been making encrypted transmissions every night at 0200 hours. When I try to decode them, he switches frequencies. Sarah noticed the children's behavior changing too. The kids from Garrison's group were withdrawn and nervous, flinching at sudden sounds and avoiding eye contact with adults. More disturbing, they seemed afraid of Garrison himself, despite his outwardly protective demeanor. The truth began unraveling during what should have been a routine community meeting. Garrison had called the gathering to discuss resource optimization, a phrase that made Marcus's skin crawl with its clinical detachment. We need to face reality, Garrison announced, standing before the assembled group with the authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Winter is coming, supplies are limited, and we're responsible for 48 people now. Difficult decisions need to be made. Dr. Vasquez looked up from where she was treating Maya's latest radio burn, a hazard of working with improvised equipment. What kind of difficult decisions? Contribution-based resource allocation, Garrison replied smoothly. Everyone contributes according to their ability, everyone receives according to their contribution. It's fair and logical. Pete's weathered face darkened with understanding. You're talking about abandoning people who can't work as hard. The elderly, the sick, the very young. I'm talking about survival mathematics, Garrison countered. Emotion clouds judgment. Leadership requires making choices that serve the greater good. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Marcus felt pieces clicking into place. The encrypted radio transmissions, the fearful children, the way Garrison's people seemed broken rather than grateful for rescue. Jennifer Walsh, who had come from the school shelter to coordinate supply deliveries, spoke up from the back of the room. This is exactly what the wolves preached when they first approached our original settlement. Efficiency over humanity. Strength over compassion. Maya's teenage instincts proved sharper than any adult's suspicion. You're not a refugee at all, are you? You're one of them. Garrison's mask of benevolent leadership slipped for just a moment, revealing something calculating and cold beneath. I'm a realist. The wolves understand what it takes to build something that lasts in this new world. Sentiment is a luxury that gets everyone killed. You infiltrated us, Marcus said, his voice deadly quiet. Your whole group, they're not refugees. They're spies. Some are, Garrison admitted with chilling casualness. Others are converts. People who learned that survival requires abandoning outdated concepts of morality. The children? Well, children adapt quickly when properly taught. Dr. Vasquez stood up slowly, her medical oath warring with growing horror. You're talking about indoctrinating traumatized children into your philosophy of abandoning the vulnerable. I'm talking about teaching them strength instead of weakness, Garrison replied. The world has changed. Old rules don't apply. What happened next surprised everyone, including Garrison himself. Lucy, who had been quietly coloring at a corner table, walked calmly to the center of the room. The 7-year-old looked up at the man who would remake her into something harder and colder. My daddy used to say that people who hurt kids are scared inside, she said in her clear, innocent voice. He said scared people try to make everyone else scared too, but brave people make everyone else brave. Her simple words seemed to break whatever spell Garrison's rhetoric had begun weaving over some of the adults. One by one, members of Garrison's own group began stepping away from their leader, choosing to stand with the community that had shown them genuine protection. Sarah found her voice first. This is our home. These are our family. And family means everyone matters, the strong, the weak, the young, the old. Marcus realized that Garrison had made a fatal miscalculation. He understood power and manipulation, but not the strength that came from voluntary sacrifice for others. The man could break communities through fear and division, but he couldn't comprehend what held this one together. You can choose, Marcus told Garrison's followers. Stay and be part of something built on protecting each other, or leave with him and see where his philosophy really leads. 14 of Garrison's 22 followers stepped away from their former leader, including the frightened children who had been living under his harsh education. Only 8 adults remained loyal to his vision of survival through strength alone. Garrison looked around the room at faces that had rejected his logic, his efficiency, his cold mathematics of human worth. You're all going to die. When the real test comes, weakness will destroy you. Maybe, Pete said with quiet dignity. But we'll meet whatever comes as human beings, not as predators. As Garrison and his remaining followers prepared to leave, Maya intercepted a radio transmission that made her blood run cold. She pulled Marcus aside, her young face pale with terrible understanding. The wolves know everything now. Our defenses, our numbers, our capabilities. Garrison wasn't just trying to take over, he was gathering intelligence for a major assault. Marcus watched their unwelcome guests disappear into the forest, understanding that the siege at the school had been merely reconnaissance. The wolves had tested their response, measured their character, and now they knew exactly what they were facing. How long do we have? Sarah asked, having overheard Maya's report. Maya adjusted her radio frequencies, monitoring the encrypted channels she had identified as wolf communications. Based on their previous attack patterns, maybe a week. They're planning something unprecedented, a coordinated assault on multiple communities simultaneously. As the community settled in for the night, children safely tucked into warm beds and adults standing vigilant guard, Marcus realized that Garrison had been wrong about their fundamental weakness. Their greatest strength wasn't their supplies or defenses or strategic position. Their greatest strength was their refusal to sacrifice their humanity for survival, even when that choice might cost them everything. The Last Refuge Part 7, The Final Stand. The attack came at dawn on the 7th day, just as Maya had predicted. The first sign wasn't the sound of engines or the howls of infected. It was the sudden silence of the mountain birds that had become their early warning system. Sarah jolted awake in the main lodge, instantly alert despite having only slept 3 hours. Maya, report. The teenager was already at her radio station, headset on and fingers flying across her equipment. Multiple vehicle signatures approaching from 3 directions. They're using the old logging roads Pete told us about. 15 minutes. Marcus rolled out of his sleeping bag, instantly shifting into combat mode. Jake, start the backup generators. We need full power for the defensive systems. Dr. Vasquez, get the children to the secure room. Pete, activate your surprises. The community had spent the past week transforming their sanctuary into a fortress. Pete's engineering tricks had proved more extensive than anyone imagined. Motion sensors, automated lighting systems, even remote-controlled barriers that could seal off access points. Jake had rigged the resort's snowmaking equipment to create instant ice patches on the approach roads, while Maya had set up signal jammers to disrupt wolf communications. 37 people total, Marcus announced as everyone took their assigned positions. 17 adults on defense, 20 children and non-combatants in the secure area. Remember, our goal isn't to win a war, it's to make attacking us too costly to be worth it. Jennifer Walsh, who had chosen to stay and help rather than return to the school shelter, took position at a second-floor window with a pair of binoculars. I can see them now. 3 groups just like Maya said. Vehicles and people on foot, but there's something else moving with them. Dr. Vasquez was herding the last of the children toward the reinforced basement room when Lucy tugged at her coat. Dr. Elena, are the bad people coming to hurt us? Some confused people are coming to test how strong we are, Dr. Vasquez replied gently. But we're going to show them that families protect each other, and that makes us stronger than they can imagine. The first test of their defenses came when the lead wolf vehicle hit Jake's ice trap at the main access road. The truck spun sideways and slammed into a drainage ditch, blocking the route for the vehicles behind it. Angry shouts echoed across the snow as the wolves were forced to abandon their motorized assault in favor of approaching on foot. Phase 1 successful, Jake reported from the generator room. They're bunching up at the bottleneck just like we hoped. Pete's motion sensors triggered the automated lighting system, sudden blazes of illumination revealing the attacking force in stark detail. What Sarah saw through her window made her stomach clench with fear. The wolves hadn't just brought human fighters, they had brought infected with them, somehow keeping the undead under control and directing their movement. How are they doing that? Jennifer whispered, watching a wolf handler gesture commands to a group of zombies that responded like trained animals. Maya's voice crackled over their internal communication system. I've been analyzing their radio traffic. They're using some kind of audio frequency that affects the infected nervous system. It's not perfect control, but it's enough to direct basic movement and aggression. Marcus watched the tactical situation develop with growing concern. The wolves had learned from their previous encounters, bringing enough force to overwhelm traditional defenses. But they had also underestimated what desperate people could accomplish when protecting those they loved. Pete, activate the perimeter defenses. Jake, kill the main power except for essential systems. I want them thinking we're more vulnerable than we are. Maya, start broadcasting on emergency frequencies. Let everyone in the region know what's happening here. The next phase of the battle tested every preparation they had made. The wolves advanced in coordinated groups, using their controlled infected as living shields while human fighters provided covering fire. But Pete's defensive modifications proved their worth. Hidden barriers forced the attackers into kill zones, while unexpected obstacles broke up their formation. From her position at the communications hub, Maya maintained contact with the outside world, broadcasting their situation to any survivor communities within range. This is Pineview Resort calling all stations. We are under attack by the group calling themselves Wolves. They are using controlled infected as weapons. If we fall, they will continue spreading their poison to other communities. Dr. Vasquez emerged from the secure room, her face set with determination. The children are safe and the non-combatants are treating minor injuries. I'm needed up here. Elena, you should stay with the kids, Sarah protested. The children need me to help keep their protectors alive, Dr. Vasquez replied, taking position at a first aid station they had established in the great room. Besides, I took an oath to do no harm, but sometimes preventing greater harm requires taking action. The battle reached its climax when the wolves managed to breach the outer perimeter, their controlled infected pouring through a gap in the defenses while human fighters provided support. Marcus realized that traditional defensive tactics wouldn't be enough. They needed to disrupt the wolves' greatest advantage. Maya, can you interfere with their control frequency? I can try, but I'll need to get closer to their transmission source. And I'll need someone to cover me. Jake immediately volunteered. I know every inch of this property's maintenance systems. I can get us close without being seen. What followed was the most dangerous gambit of the entire siege. Maya and Jake slipped out through Pete's hidden maintenance tunnels, carrying improvised signal jamming equipment toward the wolf command position. Meanwhile, the rest of the community held the main lodge against increasingly desperate attacks. The tide turned when Maya successfully disrupted the wolf frequency control system. Suddenly deprived of their handler's commands, the infected reverted to their natural behavior, attacking anything that moved, including their former controllers. The organized assault dissolved into chaos as wolves found themselves fighting both the defenders and their own undead weapons. From her position at the communication station, Maya broadcast the frequency disruption technique to other survivor communities. All stations, the wolf control system operates on 27.185 MHz. Signal jamming on that frequency breaks their control over infected. Repeat, you can turn their own weapons against them. The wolf leader, recognizing that his tactical advantage had been neutralized, made one final desperate push toward the main lodge. He and 5 followers fought their way through the chaos, reaching the front doors just as Pete triggered his ultimate surprise, a modified fire suppression system that filled the approach with dense, disorienting foam. Marcus met them at the entrance, no longer the reluctant leader who had started this journey, but a protector who had found his purpose in defending others. The confrontation was brief but decisive. Faced with a man who fought not for conquest but for family, the wolf leader discovered that desperation and love made for a formidable combination. As the morning sun climbed higher, the sounds of battle faded to silence. The surviving wolves had either fled or been captured, their controlled infected neutralized, their tactical advantage destroyed. The cost had been high, several community members were injured and their supplies were depleted, but they had achieved something more valuable than mere survival. Sarah found Marcus standing at the great room window, looking out at the aftermath of their victory. "Is it over?" "This battle is over," Marcus replied. But Maya's broadcast reached 43 different survivor communities. Word about the wolf control technique is spreading. Other communities won't be caught off guard like we were. Dr. Vasquez emerged from treating the wounded, her medical bag nearly empty but her patients stable. "We saved everyone. Every single person who was here this morning is still alive." Pete, despite his age and the stress of battle, was already planning repairs and improvements. "Next time they try something like this, we'll be ready. Though I suspect there won't be a next time, at least not from this particular group of wolves." Jake was monitoring radio traffic from communities across the region. "It's incredible. Survivor settlements are coordinating for the first time, sharing information about wolf movements and defensive techniques. We didn't just win a battle, we started a network." As the community gathered that evening around the great room fireplace, children safe and adults weary but victorious, Lucy asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "Are we safe now?" Marcus looked around at the faces illuminated by firelight, faces that had been strangers 8 months ago but were now family. They had started as individuals fleeing chaos and had become something greater, a community that chose to protect rather than prey upon the vulnerable. "We're as safe as we can make ourselves," he told her. "And more importantly, we've helped make the whole world a little bit safer." Outside, snow continued to fall on the mountain, but inside the lodge, warmth and hope burned bright against the darkness. 3 months had passed since the final battle with the wolves, and spring was painting the mountain in shades of green that Marcus had forgotten existed. He stood on the resort's main deck, watching children play in the meadow below, not just their original 7 but 23 kids now, ranging from toddlers to teenagers, their laughter echoing off the mountain walls like music. The community had grown to 68 people, a number that would have seemed impossible when they first arrived as a desperate group of 13. Word of their victory over the wolves had spread through Maya's radio network, drawing survivors who sought not just safety, but the hope of rebuilding something better than what they had lost. "The morning report," Sarah announced, joining Marcus on the deck with a steaming cup of coffee, real coffee traded from a farming community 2 valleys over. "Dr. Vasquez says all the new arrivals have cleared medical screening. Jake's got the 3rd generator online, and Pete's finished the new water filtration system." Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully, marveling at how routine their miracle had become. "Any word from the Valley Coalition meeting?" "Maya's maintaining contact. 17 communities confirmed for the Mutual Aid Compact, 3 more considering. The vote should happen this afternoon." The Valley Coalition had emerged from the network of survivor settlements that had coordinated during the wolf crisis. What had started as shared defense intelligence had evolved into something unprecedented. A formal alliance of communities committed to mutual support, resource sharing, and collective security. Jake appeared from the workshop, his perpetually grease-stained hands now holding a tablet computer instead of just wrenches. "Supply convoy from Millbrook should arrive by noon." They're bringing the medical equipment Dr. Vasquez requested, plus seeds for the expanded garden project. And the technical equipment for Maya's project? Marcus asked. All of it. Girl's going to have the most sophisticated communication hub between here and the coast. Still can't believe she's only 17. Maya had become something of a legend among the survivor communities. Her radio network now connected over 40 settlements across 3 states, facilitating everything from trade negotiations to coordinated weather warnings. More importantly, she had developed a system for sharing knowledge, medical procedures, agricultural techniques, engineering solutions, that was helping all the communities prosper. Dr. Vasquez emerged from the clinic they had built in one of the resort's converted conference rooms, her medical bag replaced by a clipboard full of vaccination schedules and health records. The Regional Medical Council meeting went well. We've established protocols for sharing pharmaceutical supplies and training new medical personnel. How many communities are participating? Sarah asked. 12 with qualified medical staff, another 8 requesting training programs. We're actually going to have enough doctors and nurses to serve the entire region properly. Pete ambled over from his latest engineering project, a wind-powered charging station for electric vehicles that several communities were beginning to manufacture. At 74, he had become the coalition's chief technical advisor, his decades of engineering experience invaluable in rebuilding infrastructure. Coalition vote results are coming in, Maya announced from her communication station. 19 communities have voted yes, 1 abstention, 0 rejections. The Valley Coalition is officially established. Cheers erupted from the deck as the news sank in. What they had accomplished went far beyond survival. They had created the foundation for a new society, one built on cooperation rather than competition, protection rather than predation. Jennifer Walsh had arrived that morning from Millbrook Elementary, which had become the coalition's educational center. The school network is expanding faster than we can train teachers. 23 schools across 14 communities, serving over 300 children. What about the university project? Marcus asked. Jennifer's face lit up with excitement. The Coalition Council approved it unanimously. We'll have our first technical college operational by next fall, teaching everything from renewable energy systems to sustainable agriculture. As the day progressed, representatives from other communities began arriving for the Coalition's inaugural celebration. The resort's great room filled with voices speaking different dialects but sharing common hopes. Farmers discussing crop rotation, mechanics comparing solar panel designs, teachers planning curriculum exchanges. Lucy found Marcus during the afternoon festivities, her 7-year-old face serious with the weight of an important question. Mr. Marcus, are we safe now? Really safe? Marcus knelt to her level, looking into eyes that had seen too much but still held wonder. We're as safe as we can make ourselves, sweetheart. But more than that, we're helping make the whole world safer. Because we help people instead of hurting them? Exactly. Because we choose to be the kind of people who build instead of break, who protect instead of prey. As evening approached, the celebration moved outdoors where Jake had set up a projection system powered by their renewable energy grid. Maya had compiled video messages from communities across the Coalition network. Faces Marcus recognized from radio conversations, children playing in rebuilt playgrounds, adults working together on construction projects. Dr. Vasquez stood before the gathered crowd, her voice carrying clearly in the mountain air. 8 months ago we were strangers fleeing chaos. Tonight, we're family celebrating the birth of something unprecedented. A society built on the principle that our strength comes from protecting our weakest members. Pete raised his glass of locally distilled spirits. To the kids who reminded us what we were fighting for, and to the future they're going to build better than we ever imagined. The toast was echoed by 68 voices, representing not just their own community but the thousands of people across the Coalition network who had chosen hope over fear, cooperation over competition. As the celebration continued into the night, Marcus found himself standing again on the deck, but this time he wasn't alone. Sarah joined him, then Dr. Vasquez, then Jake and Pete and Maya, all of them looking out at a valley where lights twinkled in windows and children's voices carried on the warm air. Think it will last? Sarah asked quietly. Maya, monitoring radio traffic from her portable equipment, answered with the confidence of youth tempered by experience. The infrastructure is solid, the communication networks are expanding, and we're training the next generation to maintain it all. But most importantly, Marcus prompted. Most importantly, we're teaching them that taking care of each other isn't weakness, it's the only thing that makes us truly strong. In the distance, a wolf howled, A real wolf, not the human predators they had defeated, but one of the wild animals that were beginning to return to the mountains as communities learned to coexist with nature rather than dominate it. The sound that might once have been threatening now seemed like a celebration, a recognition that life was returning to places where it had been driven away. The human wolves were gone, but the natural ones were coming home. Inside the lodge, children were settling into beds warmed by renewable energy and surrounded by adults who would never abandon them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, it always did, but it would also bring new opportunities to prove that humanity's greatest strength lay not in taking from others, but in giving to each other. Marcus looked around at the faces of people who had become more than friends, more than allies, more than family. They had become proof that even in humanity's darkest hour, the light of compassion could not only survive but grow bright enough to guide others home. The Last Refuge had become the first hope, and from that hope, a new world was being born. One child, one community, one act of kindness at a time. Outside, the stars shone down on a valley where tomorrow was not just a promise, but a plan already in motion.